know that there were, in fact, at least 6 people who met on the 25th floor of Trump Tower on June 9th, 2016. NBC News exclusively reported this morning that a Russian-American lobbyist and a former Soviet counterintelligence officer joined Don Jr., Paul Manafort, Jared Kushner, and the Russian lawyer. Responding to those reports, Don Jr.'s lawyer later added that a translator and a, quote, friend of Emin's, or maybe a friend of Natalia's, were also in the room. Natalia is the lawyer. Emin is the son of that Russian oligarch. And some U.S. officials suspect the lobbyist, Rinat Akhmetshin, of having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence. He was also in that room. Ties that he denies, but will his presence alone be enough to pique the interest of special counsel Robert Mueller? That is, if his interest wasn't already piqued by now. Let's bring in Tara Maller, former CIA military analyst, and Richard Laurie. Yeah, guys, come on. His interest is likely already piqued. We don't know that for sure, but there's certainly a lot of things going on. Tara, talk to me, though, about this counterintelligence officer, this former counterintelligence officer. Do we know for sure that he would have been acting in some sort of official capacity or using his potential background in a nefarious way in this meeting, or is that just all an assumption at this point?
Right now, that's an assumption and speculation, but it's not outside the realm of possibility here. There are already a number of red flags about this. The main one was, which you opened the show with it, the lack of transparency. Why are we just hearing about this individual after an extensive interview with Donald Trump Jr. yesterday, after President Trump giving remarks, after reports in the press about these emails? We've only just heard about this additional individual and another potential individual that we don't know the identity of. This individual, you know, has had ties. We know he's had previous ties to Russian intelligence in his previous career. So it's not unreasonable to think, particularly with the way that Russian intel works, that he may still have ties or be acting as sort of an unofficial go-between or agent between with the Russian intelligence agency or government. That's not unusual. You know, in this type of a meeting, obviously nobody's going to try to request the meeting and say, hi, I'm a current Russian intelligence officer, or someone with
They might say,
ties.
hey, listen, I've got Russian intelligence that might hurt your opponent. Do you want in on it?
And that they did, but the Russians are smart, and they're going to have a level of plausible deniability, a phrase we keep hearing over and over again, a phrase that is common when doing these sorts of operations, because you're not going to want to sort of show your cards right away. In this case, there was no information necessarily conveyed in this meeting. It could have just been to see if the Trump team was going to take the bait, the meeting itself. And again, there may have been other meetings or conversations where there was information conveyed, but we don't know that yet. But I'm sure that Mueller is going to be looking into this with a fine-tooth comb. And
another point, we don't actually know for sure one way or the other whether or not intelligence or any information was relayed in that meeting. We do know that they've denied it so far. Richard, you wrote a book. It's called Putin, His Downfall and Russia's Coming Crash. You understand how this morass, if you will, works. Well, tell me, why does this raise any red flags to you?
It raises 2 red flags for me. One is, I like to quote President Putin himself on the subject. There is no such thing as ex-KGB. That's the President Putin's own remark. So this fellow may have worked in the Soviet intelligence services, and he may no longer be officially affiliated with the Soviet intelligence services, but there's no such thing as ex. That both means that the mentality is formed and the availability to the government if need be. That's one thing to remember. The second thing that's important to know when thinking about Russia is crime, the Secret Services, business, and government, which in the United States are more or less 4 separate and discrete things, easily flow one into the other in Russia. You can be doing any mix and match, any of those combos at any time. So this person may have been acting in a semi-official capacity, but you don't need a little ID card to be helping out your former organization. So when I heard that he was in the room, my hackles and my red flags went up immediately.
I'm somebody who likes a healthy dose of skepticism in pretty much everything, no matter what. And I want to be a bit skeptical here. I want to play the skeptic. This guy who could be a former Russia counterintelligence officer, would we even know if he was? Do counterintelligence officers have a habit of going around and identifying themselves as such?
Well, apparently this person now has dual citizenship, and so at some point he must have had to explain his his employment record in the past, and apparently he just gave it up. That under the Soviet Union, he worked in foreign in counterintelligence. There was a time when it probably had less meaning. That certainly that it doesn't. You know, in the last 120 days, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever he did it, it was no big deal. I think it's worth being skeptical about this fellow till we know more. But there's just the stink gets a little worse every day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.